At our parents' funeral, I, Sarah Thompson, 31, never thought I would see how much my sister Emily had changed. Nothing could fill the void left by their unexpected death in a car accident. However, Emily appeared more preoccupied with what they had left behind than with their identity. As others expressed their condolences, I noticed her scheming while glancing around the room. When the situation subsided she drew me away from the party, obviously focused on money. Please let me know where you're watching from in the comments section before I reveal the most outrageous instance of my sister's self-centered behavior. And press the subscribe button. You'll want to hear what happens next, I promise. Being the younger sibling, I held Emily in high regard. Our early years of making our own private codes and building warm blanket forts now seem like they belong to strangers. We were practically glued together at one point. She would help me cross streets safely, defend me from bullies in the schoolyard, and kindly give away her valuable possessions. That connection seemed to be the cornerstone of an enduring friendship. William and Elizabeth Thompson, our parents, built a life based on hard work, devotion, and family values. Dad constructed his building a hardware store from the ground up in our small town, working long 16-hour shifts, while Mom took care of the money and never skipped a school function. They weren't wealthy at first. However, they taught us that relationships, not material possessions, were the source of true joy. Dad's cozy. Our modest home was filled with loud laughter and Mom's renowned Sunday dinners. Every week, we got together with our extended family. Their relationship was a real-life illustration of love, enduring difficult times as a team and appreciating each little victory. Emily started to change gradually around the time of her 13th birthday. When I was 10, I continued to play with dolls. When she became fixated on popularity and designer labels. Initially, our parents perceived it as typical teenage conduct. But her perspective on the world changed fundamentally. She used to be happy with homemade birthday celebrations, but now she insisted on costly festivities at hip locations. Christmas lists evolved from simple requests to detailed specifications with particular models and brands. Why am I unable to possess what Jessica has become? Recurring refrain. These things are purchased by the parents of everyone else. Our parents started to give in more often because they wanted to see her happy and maybe were concerned about her fitting in. Smaller concessions turned into bigger ones. Emily had become proficient in the art of manipulation. She started using guilt-tripping, silent treatment, and tears as her go-to tactics. Observed my sister change from being my bulwark to someone I hardly knew. We were separated by more than just geography when she went off to college. She decided to a pricey private university, but I received a scholarship to attend a state school. She calls home nearly always resulted in requests for additional funds, for school excursions that appeared dubious to be recreational, or for textbooks that inexplicably cost 3 times the real amount. Regarding the deposits for apartments, when she concluded that living in a dorm wasn't luxurious enough. After graduating from college, Emily wed Michael Parker, a driven financial advisor whose desire for prestige was exactly in line with her own. They became the couple that took yearly vacations to far-flung places, upgraded their cars, and somehow managed to steer the conversation toward their most recent purchases. After Emily's wedding, our parents paid for the majority of the expenses, but their wedding alone cost more than most people's yearly salaries. Tearful declaration that this will be my only wedding. I became an elementary school teacher in the interim because I felt more fulfillment in assisting kids in developing than in acquiring material belongings. My tiny apartment, which is furnished with used furniture and cherished books, turned into my haven. It meant the world to me when Dad would proudly return and say, "Sarah, you figured out what really matters. The design." Emily's parents' support of her lasted well into adulthood. My parents gave the money when she and Michael purchased an expensive home in the most affluent area, down payment as a loan that would never be paid back, as everyone knew. The bill for the repairs to their luxury SUV somehow ended up on our parents' credit card. Every time Emily would thank them auspiciously, and then go into great detail regarding short-term financial obstacles that would soon be overcome. Despite our differences, I made an effort to keep our relationship going. I would try to get to know my niece and nephew, Olivia and Ethan, send her a kind birthday present, and invite her out for coffee. Sometimes I would get flashbacks of the sister I used to know. such as when she remembered my favorite author had a new book out, or helped me get through a tough breakup. However, these instances became more and more uncommon. 2 weeks prior to the accident, my parents and I had our last meaningful conversation. I had visited their home to assist Dad with some yard chores and Mom's famous apple pie was made. Dad appeared thoughtful as we watched the sunset from the porch. The speaker stated, "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately." Unusually somber. Mom reached for his hand and said, "About the future, about family. We've made some decisions that may be challenging, but they're essential." They exchanged a look that I couldn't fully understand when I asked what they meant, but know that everything we do is. I had no idea at the time that this cryptic conversation would be our last or how prophetic their words would turn out to be, but my mother said it out of love for both of our daughters. The call came at that moment, the startling ring piercing the darkness, the instant knot in my stomach before I even responded, is tragically clear in my memory from 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Samuel's soft, cautious voice broke my heart when he said, "There was an accident involving your parents' car. There are no survivors. Please come identify yourself." My parents were returning from their 35th anniversary dinner at their favorite restaurant when a drunk driver struck the road. And the words jumbled together as I fell to the ground, my phone still pressed to my ear. Crossed the median. Just as they had lived, they died instantly together. I called Emily somehow, and although her initial outpouring of grief seemed sincere, by the time we had a brief conversation, even though I was shocked, I was aware of the change in her priorities because she was already inquiring about funeral expenses and whether our parents had recently updated their will. Days went by in a blur of preparations and paperwork, and I took charge of organizing the funeral while Emily said she was too upset to deal with the specifics, so she concentrated on contacting our parents' bank to inquire about insurance policies and account details prior to. "We must be realistic, Sarah," she said when I mentioned that their bodies had even been released from the morgue. Said, "Someone needs to consider these things." Going through my parents' possessions was both painful and consoling. For example, Dad's reading glasses were still on his nightstand, and Mom's gardening gloves were hanging by the back, brought on new waves of sorrow, but among their belongings, I discovered unexpected gems. Handwritten letters they had exchanged during their marriage, carefully preserved photo albums. Neat, and a diary Mom had kept about her daughters, and one entry from a few years ago concerned E. "She seems unsatisfied, money vanishes, and the W wants to give her what she needs to be happy, but I worry that we're feeding her something unhealthy. The requests keep coming, and S asks for nothing but." Explains a lot. How did two sisters from the same household diverge so much? Tension between Emily and me increased as the funeral drew near, and she started calling more frequently, always bringing up money-related topics. "Have you discovered any significant documents? Where did they store their safe deposit key? Did they make any specific requests?" My friend Rachel Lawson, who had known my family for years, was a vital source of support during this time. Recognized Emily's act of grief and insisted, "You don't have to handle her right now," following an especially demanding phone call. "Your only job is to grieve and respect your parents." We had a meeting with Mr. James Harrison, my parents' lawyer of more than 2 decades, 3 days prior to the funeral. His downtown office, complete with family photos and leather-bound books, felt comfortingly steady in the midst of chaos. He clarified that an official interpretation of the will would take place the week after the funeral, but it guaranteed us that all burial costs had been planned by our parents in advance. His kind words, "Your parents were thoughtful planners." I shifting from me to Emily. Their estate matters were carefully considered. Emily bent over. "Now, could you tell us more details? Even a broad summary." Mr. Harrison maintained a neutral expression. They favored disclosing all information at the formal reading. "I'll respect their desires." Emily didn't hide her annoyance, but she was unable to continue without coming across as blatantly avaricious. "I was physically ill and woke up before dawn on the morning of the funeral with sorrow. How could I bid farewell to the 2 individuals who had served as my cornerstone? I caught myself waiting for my mother's call, which is customary before any significant occasion, as I put on the black dress she had assisted me in choosing for a cousin's wedding only months prior. My phone's silence was overwhelming. In order to have a private moment before others, I drove to the funeral home early came. My parents had not allowed a viewing, so I sat by myself with the closed caskets. I muttered everything I wished I had said more frequently. Thank you. I cherish you. I'll do my best to honor you. I was unaware at the time that saying goodbye to my loved ones would not be the most agonizing encounter parents, but confronting my sister's transformation. My parents' profound impact on our small town was demonstrated by the swiftly filling Pleasant Grove Community Church with mourners. Dad would have been moved to tears when the employees of his hardware store arrived wearing their uniform shirts. The Garden Society, Mom's Book Club, and several pews were occupied by former pupils. Dozens of casseroles were brought by neighbors. The assistants ought to have been consoling, but Emily's performance kept dragging me away from real sadness. She was dressed in designer black, which somehow managed to look more like a fashion statement than morning wear, and she arrived fashionably late with Michael and their kids. Her arrival attracted attention to turn precisely as she had planned. Her dramatic sobs vanished as she embraced me, moment when she wasn't the subject of the cameras. She then proceeded through the crowd, using monogrammed handkerchiefs to dab at dry eyes while accepting condolences with a practiced vulnerability. When it came time for eulogies, I spoke passionately about my mother's unending compassion and my father's unwavering integrity. I told tales of their commonplace, extraordinary love. Father on winter mornings warming up Mom's car. For 35 years, Mom has been leaving notes in his lunchbox. My voice broke a few times, but I persisted because I wanted to properly honor them. Emily then gave a speech that sounded suspiciously prepared, emphasizing their support for her achievements rather than their personal qualities. She kept bringing up their generosity, with intent looks at Mr. Harrison in the third seat. The following reception was held in the basement of the church, where tables were piled high with donations from the community. I experienced real connections with people who shared my parents' memories. For my raw heart, every story is a little balm. Mrs. Jenkins remembered how her father had kept her vehicle running, never sending a bill during her husband's protracted illness. Mr. Townsend explained how his mother tutored his free for a dyslexic son until his academic performance improved. I was speaking with my father's oldest friend when Emily appeared at my elbow, her artificial smile firmly in place. "Sarah, I need to speak with you privately," she said, placing her hand on my arm, contradicting her kind voice. She looked at me toward the vacant Sunday and said, "Family business." Schoolroom before I had a chance to object. Her attitude completely changed after the door shut behind us. "Listen," she said without introducing herself. "Prior to the formal reading, we must talk about the inheritance situation." I looked at her incredulously. "Our parents have not yet been buried. Emily, this is precisely why we must resolve this matter now to avoid complications." She tugged a folded piece of paper from her handbag. "My lawyer has prepared a basic agreement for me. I'm suggesting that you give me your share of the estate in exchange for letting you keep any sentimental objects you desire." I was momentarily silenced by the audacity. "You're not able to be." Very seriously. At last I succeeded. "I mean it. It's the sensible configuration." Her tone took on a tone of reason that she had honed over years of achieving her goals. "Consider it. Sarah, I need to pay for college for both of my kids. With a large mortgage, we recently moved up to a bigger house. We offer investment opportunities, country club dues, and appearances too." I found my voice and asked, "Maintain, and I have nothing worth supporting. Let's be practical. You work at a job that will never make you rich, live in that small apartment, and drive a car that is 10 years old. Your way of life is far less expensive than mine." She grinned as if she had proven her point beyond dispute. "The money is not necessary for you." "Yes, I do. Emily, that's not how inheritance operates. Furthermore, it's definitely not what parents would prefer." She gritted her teeth. "Don't act as though you know what they would desire. Their first child was me. They were always there for me. I always knew that my needs were more important." "You mean that in order to keep you from having tantrums, they complied with your demands?" I corrected, and I was surprised at how straightforward I was. Emily's face grew serious. "For years, Sarah, I've let you pretend to be the ideal daughter, but we both understand who your parents valued, who they believed in, and who they invested in." She pushed the paper in my direction. "Put your signature on it." Unless you want to drag this out for years and have me challenge the will. I have the means to hire competent attorneys. Do you? You would argue with us in court. As we grieve for our parents. I felt as though the person in front of me was a stranger wearing my sister's face. By dealing with this privately, I'm attempting to avoid just that. She sounded as though she was being unreasonably giving. Everyone can breathe easier this way. Emily, the answer is no. I refused to sign any documents. Her voice lowered to a menacing whisper as she took a step closer. I've always made you jealous. Isn't this your small-time retaliation? All right. Keep in mind that your selfishness will cause your niece and nephew to suffer when they are unable to attend the universities they are entitled to, or I'll make sure they know exactly who is to blame so they can get the opportunities they deserve. Rachel appeared as the door abruptly opened, and it was obvious from her expression that she had heard enough. She said, "Everything okay in here?" But her tone made it clear that she knew it wasn't. Family conversation. Emily lost her temper. I walked to the door and said, "It's over now." Emily took hold of my arm. "Sarah, consider my offer. After the reading it expires." "Give her up," Rachel said with silent power. I saw a few mourners watching with worried looks as we were leaving. Emily didn't realize how far her raised voice had gone. Her carefully crafted facade of a distraught daughter was coming off, exposing the calculation underneath. I succeeded automatically navigating the remainder of the reception, taking condolences but avoiding Emily's glares from the other side of the room. Even though the encounter had been painful, it made a crucial clarification. Regardless of the outcome of the will reading, my relationship with my sister had already undergone a significant and possibly permanent transformation. I showed up at Mr. Harrison's office for the formal reading of the will 5 days after we buried our parents. The conference room with the walnut paneling felt too formal and definitive. One more reminder that my parents were no longer with me. In preparation for Emily's arrival, I sat down in the chair furthest from the door. She was not disappointing. She and Michael arrived at exactly 2 p.m., both of them dressed as though going to a business acquisition instead of a family gathering. Her assurance was evident as she gave me a curt nod before settling in across from Mr. Harrison, who was seated at the head of the table. "Sarah," she said coolly. "I came back, Emily, Michael." Mr. Harrison came in with his witness assistant's assistant. He had a heavy leather portfolio with him that appeared too significant for a mere will. He offered his condolences again, and then made adjustments, put on his reading glasses and got started. "Our purpose is to carry out William James Thompson and Elizabeth Marie Thompson's final will and testament." Formally, he started. "After much deliberation and consultation, their explicit wishes are reflected in what I am about to read. The record was it is legally binding, and was updated 6 months ago." Emily straightened, her mouth twitching into a smile. Beneath the table I saw her hand squeeze Michael's knee. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson have left detailed instructions regarding the distribution of their estate," Mr. Harrison proceeded, looking at me. "And they have designated Sarah Marie Thompson as executive of their will, with full authority to oversee the execution of their desires." Emily's eyes widened slightly, marking the first rift in her poise. The eldest child was typically given the title of executive, which she had assumed would be hers. The 247 Maple Street residence of the Thompson family, valued at approximately $425,000, will be placed, along with all of its non-specifically bequeathed contents, within a family trust. If Sarah Thompson decides to occupy it, she will have residential rights. She will also have administrative authority to keep it as a rental property, with the proceeds being distributed in accordance with the trust requirements specified in Section 12. Mr. Harrison flipped through a page. The Thompson Hardware family business, along with all of its inventory, property, and accounts receivable, which are worth roughly $1.20 to $2 million, will be transferred to the Thompson Family Trust's ownership and the particular management guidelines listed in Addendum A. As he went on to describe numerous smaller bequests to family members, nonprofit organizations, and Emily, a longtime employee, looked more and more puzzled. The principal resources were being put into trusts instead of being given out directly, which was not what she had anticipated. Then the shocking news arrived concerning liquid assets, such as investments, savings, and insurance. It came to about $870,000, and Mr. Harrison hesitated a long time. The departed have given particular guidelines in addition to this recorded ledger. He pulled out a leather-bound accounting sheet book with itemized entries that include dates, amounts, and purposes. This includes a comprehensive record of all financial aid given to Emily Thompson Parker between 2010 and 2023, totaling $328,745. A photocopied synopsis was slid across the table by him. William and Elizabeth Thompson signed acknowledgement forms for each transaction and designated these sums as advances against Emily's inheritance. Emily's face went pale as she looked over the comprehensive list. Cash presents for her wedding, the down payment for a home, auto loans, credit card rescues, vacation money, each entry painstakingly recorded and signed by her. That isn't. Perhaps, she muttered. Mister, those were presents. Harrison cleared his throat. I possess copies of each transaction's signed agreements, which made it clear that these were advances against future inheritance. Every document bears your signature. Michael grabbed the documents. As the financial advisor considered the ramifications, his eyes narrowed. This isn't allowed. They never brought up the subject of repayment in their lifetimes. Mr. Harrison clarified that they weren't obliged to. One popular tool for estate planning is advance inheritance. The deceased recorded their desire for these amounts to be reconciled, but declined to demand repayment while they were still alive. After the estate is divided, Emily Thompson Parker's face had turned from pale to ashen as he read on. After accounting for these advances, the remaining liquid assets shall be divided with 60% allocated to Sarah Thompson and 40% to Emily Thompson Parker with the following conditions. Mr. Harrison affirmed that Emily's share will be kept in trust and paid out in yearly installments over 10 years, provided Olivia and Ethan Parker have established college funds and finished a financial management course. As the implications set in, the room became quiet. The accounting of previous gifts not only drastically decreased Emily's inheritance, but she wouldn't even manage what was left. Her hope of a windfall right away had vanished. Michael snapped, his meticulously maintained professional manner crumbling. This is ridiculous, he said. We have current financial obligations based on anticipated inheritance, contractual commitments. This arrangement is completely unacceptable. Mr. Harrison was not bothered. You didn't know for sure about inheritance when you made your financial decisions. Terms, Mr. Parker. The deceased is not accountable for that. Emily's voice rose as she demanded that her parents not do this to her. My needs were always met by them. Sarah must have had some influence on this. Her eyes blazed as she turned to face me. To them, what did you say? In what way did you manipulate them into this? To be honest, I didn't know anything about their will. This surprises me just as much as it surprises you. Untruthful. Now she was almost yelling. You've always played the martyr and been envious of me. They were against me because of you. Mr. Harrison got in the way. I can personally confirm, Mrs. Parker, that your parents alone, after careful deliberation, made these choices. Sarah didn't participate in their estate preparing. He reached into the portfolio and pulled out an envelope. Your parents left this letter to be read because they expected your response. Right now. He opened the pages and started reading in my father's distinctively direct style. If anyone is reading this letter, Emily and Sarah, we are no longer with you, and we sincerely apologize for that. We want you to know how much we cherished you both, in your own special ways. Since you were young, Emily, we have attempted to provide you with everything you desired in the hope that it would secure your happiness. We now understand that we failed you as parents by doing this. By continuously meeting your financial obligations without taking responsibility, we made it possible for patterns to develop that have kept you from experiencing the fulfillment that comes from living within your means and achieving your own success. Our will's provisions are an attempt, albeit a tardy one, to teach you how to be financially responsible, not a form of punishment. The thorough accounting of previously supplied funds is not intended to clarify rather than to embarrass. Every time we made a financial assistance offer, we signed paperwork and described it as an advance against inheritance. Maybe you decided not to. Keep these terms in mind. Sarah, you still have financial responsibility and self-sufficiency. Overlooked. We are proud of the principles you uphold and the deliberate decisions you have made. We trust you with executive responsibilities because we know you will be just and kind even in trying situations. Decisions must be made. Our deepest desire is for both of our daughters to experience true happiness and making amends with one another. For far too long, money has caused strife in our family. You might be able to find a better financial and interpersonal relationship without us. With unending love. Parents, between us, the letter hung in midair. Emily had crumpled her face. I couldn't tell if it was out of real emotion or disappointed expectations. This is debatable, Michael said, assembling the papers in rough form. We'll be talking to our lawyer right now. This is unacceptable. Mr. Harrison gave a composed nod. You are fully entitled to legal representation, but I should let you know that the will has a no contest clause in it. If unsuccessful, any legal challenge would lead to total being disinherited. Michael clearly faltered. He was aware of the consequences because he was a financial advisor. Mr. Harrison added, I also have video footage of William and Elizabeth addressing any allegations of undue influence and providing an explanation for their sound judgment. Emily's chair scraped the hardwood floor as she suddenly stood up. She clutched her high-end handbag with shaking hands and said, This isn't over, Sarah. Not by a long shot. You won't get away with this. According to Mr. Harrison looked at me empathetically as they slammed the heavy door behind them and stormed out. Your parents expected this response. They had trouble making these choices because, Miss Thompson, they genuinely thought that this would ultimately benefit both of their daughters. Still taking in what I had heard, I nodded. The disclosure of my parents' meticulous records, their acknowledgement of how they had made Emily possible, and their comprehension of our disparate methods for handling money. It depicted parents who were far more observant than I had thought. Were they aware of her reaction? Quietly I asked. He acknowledged that they hoped for better, but they were ready for this result. How you want to move forward as an executive is the question at hand. I recognized my mother's handwriting in the margins of the copy of their letter that I was looking down at. My father's typed words were supplemented with brief notes. An attempt had been made at their last parenting act to veer off course in order to support Emily's development while they are away. Finally, I said, I'll respect their wishes just as they intended. I didn't realize at the time how hard Emily would fight to get them overturned, or how much it would cost us both. Within hours of the will reading, the storm broke. My phone was inundated with alerts, voicemails from Michael detailing the legal repercussions, text messages from Emily ranging from ferocious accusations to heartfelt pleas, and bewildered questions from relatives who had heard Emily's side of the story. As stated by her quickly spreading story, I had tricked our elderly, frail parents into altering their wills as they were dying, depriving her of her just inheritance while feigning the ideal daughter. Anyone who was aware of our parents' keen intelligence or the timing of their will update 6 months earlier would have found the story ridiculous, but Emily had always been convincing when she played the victim. You must listen to what she has to say. During our coffee date the next day, Rachel issued a warning. You engineered this whole trust out of a secret resentment of her lifestyle, she says. Jealously made the arrangement. I gazed into my unfinished latte. How can I combat something that utterly untrue? With truth, Rachel said. Family members started picking sides as a result of remembering your parents' identities and preferences. Aunt Margaret, Mom's sister, called to provide steadfast assistance. Last Christmas, Elizabeth informed me of their estate plans exposed. Although she was concerned about Emily's response, she believed it was essential. They weren't coerced. After years of worry, they made this deliberate choice, Sarah. Others weren't as encouraging. Uncle Charles, Dad's brother, who had always preferred Emily, left a critical message casting doubt on my morals. My close relatives stopped answering to messages. Just as my parents had hoped, the family was breaking up. The passage Emily became more and more desperate as the financial truth of her predicament set in. Last month we made a deposit on a lake house. If you don't release funds right away, we end up losing everything. The tuition for Olivia's private school is due. Will you inflict pain on your niece? According to Michael, we may need to file for bankruptcy. Do you want it that way? To ruin the family of your sister? Every message tested my determination to respect my parents' wishes and twisted the knife. In times of weakness, I thought about caving in and moving money out of the trust structure to put an end to the dispute. But I remained grounded thanks to Mr. Harrison's sage advice. This pressure was something your parents expected. During our weekly calls, he reminded me. These provisions were made after observing this trend recur for years. Emily won't benefit in the long run from betraying their trust now. I eventually plucked up the courage to go to my parents' house, which is now officially owned by the family trust. 3 weeks after the funeral, I entered the quiet house with my key memories hammering me from every angle. The imprint of Dad's body was still visible on his reading chair. Mom's, a gardening calendar with appointments written in her exact handwriting, was displayed in the kitchen, extending into an unimaginable future. I heard a car door slam outside as I was going through some accumulated mail. I saw Emily striding up the walkway through the window, her resolve evident at every turn. Before she could use her key, I opened the door. As if I were the intruder, she demanded, "What are you doing here?" "Going through the mail and seeing how items." Calmly I replied, "The duties of the executive." She pushed into the foyer past me. "I came for the silver and Mom's jewelry. The oldest daughter should inherit family heirlooms. I acknowledged that the will said you would receive the majority of Mom's jewelry. However, it must first undergo a thorough inventory. Mr. Harrison has scheduled an appraiser the following week. I can claim what's mine without the help of an appraiser." She went with a purpose. In the direction of our parents' bedroom. With growing anxiety I followed. "Please, Emily. There is a procedure to adhere to." With her fingers closing around the pearl necklace Dad had given her on their 25th anniversary, she was already opening her mother's jewelry box. "What should have been mine is being taken by me already." I recalled the bequest listing and said, "I was specifically left the pearls." Mom was aware. I admired them so much. Emily hesitated, pearls hanging from her fingers, but she finally said, "Of course, she left you the most valuable pieces." "That is untrue. Grandmother is giving you the sapphire pendant and her diamond earrings." "Emily, the wool is fair." She must have heard something in my tone. She took a handful of pearls and put them back of other things, cramming them into her handbag. "I'm going to take these." "Stop me, please." Something that made my blood run cold caught my attention as she pushed past me. The hallway shelf was missing a number of the tiny figurines from Mom's collection. They were present at the funeral reception. "Have you been taking things from the house?" I responded. Her brief moment of guilt validated my suspicion. She dodged the question, saying, "You have no right to inventory my movements." This was also my parents' house. Following her departure, I thoroughly examined the house and found many missing items. Mom's first edition books, Dad's collection of vintage timepieces, and the sterling silver service. As I called Mr. Harrison, I started to feel nauseous. His suggestion was made right away. Installing security cameras and changing the locks. He suggested documenting everything that was missing. If the situation gets out of hand, we might need this. The next day, Michael's lawyer sent me an email formally contesting the will on, due to mental incapacity and undue influence. Even though Mr. Harrison cautioned about the no clause of contest, they were pursuing legal action. As we collect records for our legal, to my defense, I found a secret folder on Dad's desk at home. A number of credit card statements with unauthorized charges in my parents' names were found inside. Purchases of luxury goods in shops they never went to when I knew they were somewhere else. There was According to a private investigator's report, Emily managed to get credit cards in their names and charge more than $45,000 without their knowledge. An unsent letter from Dad to Emily, written just 3 weeks prior to the accident, was also in the folder. "Emily, we have proof that credit cards were opened in our names without our consent permission. We are aware of your responsibility. This betrayal of trust is very hurtful. We have spent years of funding your way of life while witnessing your increasingly careless financial choices. This is over. Our lawyer has advised us of the required legal actions but are allowing you a single chance to defend your actions before moving forward." My hands shook, Dad, as I understood the significance of this. Just before they passed away, my parents had learned of Emily's deceit and were getting ready to confront her. Teaching responsibility was not the only goal of the trust provisions. They were defending their possessions against a person they could no longer rely on. Mr. Harrison's normally calm face faltered when I told him about these discoveries. "This makes us stronger against the will contest," he said. "However, I sincerely apologize for this more discomfort. Do you want this information to be used in court?" It was a heavy question. Emily's legal challenge would probably be unsuccessful if the evidence were used, but it would also obliterate any chance of reconciliation forever. Publicly exposing her deception seemed like a line. It was impossible to uncross. I said, "Let's put it on hold. I'll give it another go at talking to her." In order to avoid lawyers and family conflicts, I set up a neutral coffee shop where we could meet Emily. Her uncharacteristically unkempt appearance was concealed by her expensive sunglasses when she arrived, to be dyed in red. After we gave our order, I said, "I can't keep doing this. The estate will be depleted by the legal fees alone. Nobody comes out on top." She retorted, "You could end this today. Simply consent to nullifying the trust clauses." I drew in my breath. I located Dad's file. I am aware of the credit cards. Emily, her mug froze, almost to her mouth. Her poise totally failed her for once. She whispered that they knew. Gave a nod. "They were preparing to attack you prior to the mishap. They updated their will with the trust provisions for this reason." Her hand trembled and she put down her cup. "You're not understanding. We were in financial trouble. Michael's investments didn't work out. The house was going to be lost. I was desperate. You could have asked them for assistance directly. Following their previous actions, they were beginning to refuse more frequently. I couldn't take the chance." Her voice broke. "With this information, what will you do?" For the first time in years, we had a sincere conversation as the question hung between us. "Depending on." I gave you a thoughtful response. "If you decide to work within the trust provisions and drop the legal challenge, nobody else must be aware of it. You can enroll in the course on financial management, create the child's finance for college and rebuild. However, I will be forced to present all of the evidence if you keep disputing this." Across the table, our gazes locked. The legacy of two sisters at a crossroads dangling in the balance between our parents. She eventually said, "I need time to think," and walked away. I questioned whether I had been wise to offer this olive branch. I was unaware at the time that Michael had plans of his own that would completely alter the situation, and that Emily's predicament was even more dire than she had acknowledged. Mr. Harrison was at my side as I ascended the courthouse steps, which shone in the morning light. His comforting presence calmed me down. This moment had been the result of 6 weeks of legal wrangling. Emily's challenge to our parents' will be heard in a formal hearing. She had decided to move forward in spite of my offer of forgiveness and the proof I had discussed in private. "Don't forget, Mr." In a whisper, Harrison said, "Judge Blackwell is known for seeing through emotional manipulation. Remain true to the facts." Emily and Michael sat in the imposing courtroom with their Emily. A sharp-featured lawyer with a history of using aggressive tactics, was dressed conservatively in a black dress that shouted bereaved daughter, with her hair pulled back in a modest fashion in contrast to her typical glitzy look. The image's calculation made. As the proceedings got underway, their lawyer presented a convincing story about how their aging parents had been isolated by their envious sister, undermining their vulnerable eldest daughter. They were poisoned against their beloved Emily. The performance was brilliant, manipulating the truth. When it was my turn, Mr. Harrison made a methodical, evidence-based argument, highlighting Emily's role as a mother whose children would suffer and depicting me as financially secure, single, and having basic needs in contrast to her client's more significant financial responsibilities. My parents' video testimony elucidating their sound mind decisions, documentation of statements from their doctor attesting to their exceptional mental capacity at the time the will was updated, as well as the ongoing financial support Emily has received over the years. He concluded, "Your Honor, this is a case of parents making a decision, not of undue influence. Challenging choice to finally set financial limits with their grown daughter, following years of supporting demands that were becoming more and more unsustainable." During our presentation, I observed Michael becoming more and more agitated, chatting tensely with their lawyer and glancing at his observe Despite the stressful situation, his actions seemed strange. Judge Blackwell, a woman with silver hair and piercing eyes, questioned both sides sharply. Her attention to your parents' video testimony expressly states their concerns regarding your financial management, citing conversations with you regarding the matter. Specific dates and documentation indicated she was not influenced by emotional appeals. Mrs. Parker, she spoke directly to Emily. Advanced nature of earlier gifts. Do you deny that these discussions took place? They may have used words, but it was clear that these were gifts, and Emily writhed visibly. The judge pointed out that although they wanted to assist me in keeping up our family's way of life, here are 14 different documents that you have signed acknowledging these as advances against inheritance. Examining the exhibits, the clauses that expressly state these terms are signed by you. Emily's testimony contained inconsistencies that were revealed by the persistent questioning. When the judge announced a brief break to go over the last documents, Michael got up and left the courtroom with his phone to his ear, never to be seen again. The judge delivered her decision with unwavering conviction when the case resumed. William and Elizabeth Thompsons will reflect their well-considered intentions, and after reviewing all the evidence, I find no supporting evidence for allegations of undue influence or diminished capacity, consistently documented over time with appropriate legal advice. The contest is rejected. Looked straight at Emily. In addition, since the will has a legitimate no contest clause that is activated by this challenge, I must enforce its provisions. In accordance with Section 5, Paragraph 3 of the document, Mrs. Parker's inheritance rights are hereby revoked. Emily's face went pale as she grasped the consequences. By continuing the competition in spite of cautions, she had activated the provision that she would only receive certain personal belongings specified in the will, eliminating even the trust provisions. Her lawyer started, "Your Honor," but the judge cut her off with a raised hand, saying, "My ruling is final." The court adjourned, and Emily fell to a bench in the hallway outside, staring at the wall. After leaving her alone, her lawyer left with a cold. "I'll bill you for my services," she said cautiously, uncertain of what to say following such a catastrophic result. "I attempted to alert you." "Michael's gone," she whispered so softly that I nearly missed it. "What do you mean gone?" she asked, looking up with hollow eyes. "He emptied our joint accounts this morning. He texted during recess that he's filing for divorce," she said, adding that he would not be receiving the inheritance. She laughed bitterly. "There's no point in continuing a failed investment." It seemed that I was just another unsuccessful investment opportunity. The kids' private life, the house is underwater, the cars are leased with payments we cannot afford, and the cruelty of his timing, leaving her at her lowest point, stunned me into silence. "Next week is when school tuition is due." Her voice sounded distant, which worried me more than "I've got nothing, Sarah. Not nearly anything." In spite of everything, seeing my protective instinct, which I believed had died years ago, was triggered by a sister who was so completely broken. Either the cunning Emily who had surrounded me during the funeral, or the cunning Emily of the courtroom. This individual was facing the disintegration of her whole life structure. Where are Ethan and Olivia now? One tear ran down her cheek as I said, "With my neighbor." I couldn't bear for them to witness this. How will I tell them their father left? That our house will be taken away? That switching schools will be necessary? I sat on the hard bench next to her, keeping a small distance that symbolized years of compromised trust. "You don't have to figure everything out today," I finally said. "One step at a time." Later that night, after I dropped Emily off at her kids' house, I came home to my apartment to discover a package that had been delivered during the hearing. It contained a sealed envelope with Mom's handwriting to me, stating that it should be delivered once all legal matters have been resolved. I broke the seal with trembling fingers. "If you're reading this, my dearest Sarah, the difficult path we chose has come to an end. Your father and I struggled with our choices, knowing that they might cause you and Emily to be permanently separated. We love both of our daughters equally, but in different ways. That was never our intention. We regret that we allowed Emily to continue this pattern until it became her identity. Emily has battled insecurities her entire life, continuously seeking approval from others through material belongings and social standing. We hope that the legal provisions have set the necessary boundaries, but we fear they cannot mend the deeper wounds on its own, which is why we're giving you our most crucial legacy, the potential for reconciliation, and a clause in the family trust that gives the executive discretion over asset distribution in the event of a significant change in circumstances. This letter gives you the freedom to use that discretion without compromising our goals. Being kind doesn't always mean giving people what they want. Sometimes it means providing something different starting when they're prepared to take a different route. Know that we respect your judgment and love you unconditionally. Mom, we will always be by your side. Tears clouded the familiar handwriting as I read the letter 3 times, even from a distance. The legal battle was over, but the parents were still trying to teach both of their daughters about accountability, consequences, and the possibility of redemption. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, I stood in my parents' garden, which is now officially my garden, watching autumn. The true challenge, healing our family, was only getting started. 3 months before I had moved into the family home, leaves danced across freshly turned soil. The garden had become my therapy, the process of nurturing new growth, helping me process grief and change. A lot had happened since that terrible day when Emily lost everything. Michael had completely abandoned her, moving to a different state with his young assistant, and finding unexpected solace in its familiar creaks and memories, leaving a mountain of joint debt and little child support. The divorce process exposed financial frauds he had concealed from Emily as well, investments made using borrowed funds, credit lines maxed out on risky endeavors. After their home was foreclosed, Emily and the kids moved into a tiny apartment. Olivia and Ethan went to public school, a change that turned out to be surprisingly beneficial, as they both discovered hobbies and friends that keep them entertained, more genuine than their private, exclusive programs had. Above all, Emily had accepted a position as an administrative assistant at a nearby nonprofit, which was her first actual job in years. The humble experience of taking phone calls and overseeing. At first, she had been traumatized by someone else's schedule, but it eventually changed into. Our relationship remained fragile, and tentative conversations centered mostly on the needs of the children, rather than our traumatic past. There was something like pride in genuine contribution. Steps require distance. After giving it a lot of thought and speaking with Mr. Harrison, I had decided what my parents' final legacy would be. Using the discretionary clause they had described, I created educational trusts for Olivia and Ethan that would cover the full cost of their college educations when the time came. These trusts were set up so that neither parent could touch them, acting as a direct gift from their grandparents to their offspring. I established a matching fund for Emily's allowable living expenses, whereby the trust would match each dollar she made from work up to a predetermined amount. This was not a handout, but a hand-up that recognized her independence efforts. Emily's response to these changes wasn't what I anticipated. Instead of feeling relieved or appreciative, she seemed almost, "Why would you do this after everything?" Uncomfortable with the generosity. She inquired, her voice. "I tried to take everything from you," said Small. I gave an honest response. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm respecting your parents' ultimate desire to assist you in creating a sustainable life, not to allow dependency, and to make sure your kids have chances despite what adults decide." My own passion project was the scholarship fund I set up in my parents' names, intended to assist our community's first-generation college students. It reflected their views on opportunity and education. The initial 5 scholars, who were William and Elizabeth Thompson, would start school the following autumn. On a typical Tuesday, the letter arrived and slipped under my door while I was teaching in school. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Emily's handwriting on the envelope. We had mostly communicated via quick texts and essential phone conversations regarding pragmatic issues. I poured a glass of my mother's favorite wine as I waited until the evening to open it. Liquid bravery. I've started and stopped writing this letter a dozen times because I can't find the right words to express what needs to be said, Sarah. I apologize if this is insufficient and offensive. For years, how do you apologize? Of cruelty, deceit, and entitlement for attempting to take what wasn't rightfully mine? For deceiving not only you but also our parents, who made a great effort to love us both? Well, the unpleasant reality is that I'm finally facing is that I've tried to use outside approval to fill a void in my adult life. Larger homes, high-end labels, and status markers. Since the emptiness was immaterial, nothing was ever sufficient. It's evident to me now that Olivia enjoys her nearly free community theater program. Observing how well Ethan does in his science club. Yes, I started therapy at last. According to my therapist, it's critical to identify our lowest points. My own was realizing while sitting in that courtroom that I had staked everything on a man who viewed me as an investment vehicle and lost a sister who remained compassionate in spite of everything. Forgiveness is not something I deserve or expect. However, I would like you to know that I am striving to become someone distinct. Someone who could one day be deserving of your sisterhood once more. The matching fund. I promise to use the provision you made as intended, as a bridge to true self-sufficiency rather than a crutch, even though it feels like more generosity than I deserve. I'm taking classes in accounting this spring at a community college. As it happens, I'm good with numbers when they're not just indicators of status. Ethan and Olivia inquire about you. Their aunt is missed. They would be delighted to see you whenever you are ready. No deadline, no pressure. Just hope for a better future and regret for the past. The letter wasn't a panacea for years of harm, Emily. Once broken, trust doesn't reassemble without any obvious crux, but I hadn't dared to hope for that. An authentic recognition and the initial hesitant move in the direction of something new. After 2 weeks, I extended an invitation to Ethan and Olivia spent a Saturday afternoon baking in the kitchen of their grandparents. Emily fell off but didn't presume she was one of them. One more tiny token of renewed regard for limits. I asked her if she wanted to stay, which surprised me. It felt like a tiny wound starting to heal when she put on her mother's old apron with a cautious smile. I didn't realize how wise my parents had been. It was about more than money and material belongings. The unhealthy patterns that threatened to define their daughter's life were finally addressed. Partnership for all time. The inheritance that was most important was not found in real estate or bank accounts. Actions, but in the principles they believed we would eventually adopt. Observing the sunset from I understand that the path of my parents' porch, our family porch with its many generations of memories, the healing process is just getting started. There will be obstacles in the way, and old habits might come back. However, for the first time, I'm hopeful that my sister and I will eventually return to those small girls who invented secret languages and constructed blanket forts. How about you? Have you ever had a family dispute over money or inheritance? Do you think it's acceptable to overlook financial betrayals? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. Additionally, if this story touched you, please think about sharing it with others and subscribing, who might find solace in the knowledge that, despite severe betrayal, family healing is achievable. I appreciate you sharing this journey with me, and I hope your own family's stories lead to healing. Whatever difficulties you encounter, the touching tale of Sarah and Emily Thompson exposes the unadulterated suffering caused by inheritance disputes within families, a situation that has the power to sever even the strongest ties. Sarah's path, characterized by her significant lessons for handling such conflicts with grace, fortitude, and an emphasis on healing, can be learned from the sisters' entitlement and eventual redemption. To resolve disagreements over inheritance effectively, start by carrying out the deceased's specific wishes. William, Sarah's parents, and, in order to help Emily become more financially responsible, Elizabeth created a will with trusts, which Sarah upheld in spite of pressure. Working with a reputable estate lawyer to review legal documents guarantees clarity and fidelity to those intentions, avoiding assumptions that frequently spark family disputes. Conflict. Tensions can rise due to misunderstandings or entitlement, such as Emily's hope for a windfall, but a dedication to the deceased's wishes keeps the process grounded in justice. Setting clear limits is essential when feelings are running high. Sarah's resolve was put to the test by Emily's deceptive methods, which included threats of legal action and demands for a funeral, with composure declining to sign over her fair share while allowing for future empathy. Sarah safeguarded her emotional well-being, while keeping the possibility of reconciliation open. Setting limits doesn't imply severing connections. They make room for more healthful interactions, like when Sarah asked Emily's kids to bake, building a relationship on her terms. Additionally, documentation is essential for preventing arguments from getting out of control. Elizabeth and William's careful record of more than $328,000 in advances to Emily, along with her signatures, turned out to be crucial in the legal proceedings. Maintaining thorough documentation of all financial transactions, including advances, gifts, and loans, removes uncertainty and provides protection. In opposition to allegations of unfairness, families can avoid the legal disputes that squander money in relationships thanks to this foresight. In order to successfully navigate the complexities of inheritance, professional guidance is essential. In order to protect her parents' wishes, Sarah relied on Mr. Harrison, their lawyer, to interpret the trusts and no contest clause in the will. Hiring an estate attorney early on aids in anticipating disputes, define terminology, and guarantee enforceability, particularly when controversial clauses like there are conditions or trusts involved. Desperation-driven Emily's legal challenge and Michael's influence crumbled under the pressure of hard evidence and the law. Beyond the law, the story of inheritance is changed when healing is given precedence over material wealth. Sarah's parents addressed Emily's unhealthy habits with their estate, rather than punishing her. Intending to help her become independent, families can change the topic from money to meaning by emphasizing values like accountability and family unity. Sarah did this by setting up a scholarship fund in her parents' names to support community education. The foundation of lasting reconciliation is compassion and patience. Sarah's choice to make an offer. Emily's parents' belief in second chances was reflected in the matching fund that was linked to her job. This gesture, which was motivated by hope rather than duty, recognized Emily's attempts to rebuild without permitting reliance. Slowly, healing occurs through tiny actions like Emily's letter of responsibility or her cautious baking smile. These fleeting yet important moments demonstrate that even in cases of severe betrayal, trust can be restored. Additionally, proactive asset protection reduces risks in the event of a dispute. When Sarah discovered that Emily had charged $45,000 on her credit card without authorization, her parents' documentation highlighted the importance of being watchful. Installing new locks, assets can be kept intact for their intended use by preventing misuse with security systems or monitoring accounts. Even after death, open communication lessens conflict. Emily's charges of manipulation were refuted by William and Elizabeth's letter to their daughters, which explained their decisions. When preparing an estate, think about talking to your heirs about your intentions or leaving written explanations to offer background information and resolution. Systems of support, such as Sarah's friend Rachel or Emily's future therapist, provides emotional support. Professionals, friends, or family can support you through stress and grief, and serve as a reminder to put your health first. Lastly, the real legacy is not found in financial records. Sarah's creation of trusts for Emily's kids' education and her parents' faith in opportunity and development was embodied in a community scholarship fund. Families can honor departed loved ones and promote unity by directing their energies toward meaningful legacies. Family bonds are put to the test by inheritance disputes like Sarah and Emily's, but they also present chances for development and reconciliation. By respecting goals, establishing limits, and recording, you can manage these by making transactions, getting advice, and putting values before valuables. Challenges with knowledge. Have you ever had family disputes over inheritance or money? How did you discover a solution? For more advice on mending relationships, subscribe and share your story below. Following treachery. Let's create a legacy in memory of our loved ones by prioritizing relationships over material wealth, of empathy and bonding.